John Hemmerling is running for the San Diego County Sheriff. John is a former Marine Corps colonel and San Diego police officer. How long have you been San Diego police officer?
Almost a decade.
Almost 10 years. Currently, John oversees the city attorney's criminal and community justice divisions. Please welcome Colonel John Hemmerling.
Thanks, Dan, and thank you all for those that stuck around here. I had I'm sure that Dan probably told you I had an event earlier that I had been pre-planned for quite a while back. We did a meet and greet down in Kearny Mesa. Some of you that may know New York Mike and a couple other individuals there at an event there. They did a podcast for me, but it was a gathering that I had, and I had a great turnout there, and I was glad to quickly turn it around and make my way out here. I've been out here a couple times, and so a lot of you probably in the audience, I've recognized faces, already kind of know who I am, but we made it through. The primary, as you all know, several months ago, it was a very crowded primary, not just in the sheriff's race, it was crowded in many of the races, and now we're down to 2. It's definitely a stark difference between myself and my opponent, for sure. So you're going to have an opportunity. It won't be as difficult whenever you're picking individuals going into November. There's only 2 choices on the ballot this time. And I can tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that Dan said, but those of you who probably haven't heard me before, don't know who I am, kind of my background. My background is 30 plus years in public service. Between active and reserve time, I spent 30 years in the Marine Corps, 2 combat tours. And when I did that, when I left the Marine Corps, when I left active duty, I became a police officer in the city of San Diego. I did that for almost a decade. Left there as a field training officer, training individuals and training officers to go out in the field and also represent their community. And then while I was there, I went to night law school. I went to the University of San Diego while I was working in City Heights, one of the toughest areas in the entire county of San Diego. I got my law degree. I became a prosecutor in the city of San Diego. I eventually also became counsel to 2 police chiefs. I was lead counsel to 2 police chiefs, and then I eventually became the chief criminal prosecutor in the city of San Diego. I had a staff of about 200 plus that worked for me, and we did the whole spectrum of obviously prosecuting cases, not prosecuting cases, diverting individuals, holding people accountable, and doing what needed to be done, and I ran that office. And you talk about the things that makes me different. That's one thing that makes me different. I've been tested in multiple organizations. I've been a leader in multiple organizations, and that's what makes me different, and I've been successful in those organizations. I know what it takes to be an effective law enforcement agency. I know what it takes to be an effective law enforcement officer. I've done it. Also, what makes a difference is public safety and leadership. Look at the jail deaths that we've had in the last year. This is an important topic. It should be important to everybody because it reflects on a couple things. And no matter what anybody says, what the numbers are, and they've been skyrocketing, there's a common denominator, which is drugs, which we'll get to, but there's a common denominator too, which is leadership, a void of leadership. And it has more than doubled in the last year. And it is a humanity problem because when you are tasked with the care and custody of somebody, you have to make sure you do it right. We expect that no matter who you are to do it right. But it also reflects on leadership. You can have all the plans out there and all the possibilities and everything and all the procedures, but if you don't have good, strong leaders to put those in place, you have problems, and that's where we're at. I put public safety first. I put our communities first. I put victims of crimes first. That's absolutely important. It has to be done. There's a lot of things that can be done on the public safety front. I believe in compassion. I believe in accountability. Both of those. It's important. You have to have both of those to be successful in law enforcement, no matter where you're at. I've been vocal. I think I told you before, but some things that have developed too. I've been vocal about some of the things that's going on that you should expect from your public safety officials. You should expect from every elected official when things impact your community that's wrong, somebody speaks out. I think I told you before, I had spoken out to the state about releasing individuals who are violent criminals, releasing them early from prison. We have to make sure that we hold those individuals accountable. Sure, we have the ability, and we should do release of some individuals based on what their history is. You know, there's compassion involved in that. When someone is a violent criminal, we have to hold them accountable. We've had in the last few months the state placing sexually violent predators in our rural communities out here. I'm sure you all have followed that.
Yeah.
I wrote a letter to the first one. I just wrote a letter to the court on the most recent one that's being placed out in Hakumba. Hakumba, a very small town. I'm sure many of you have probably been through there in Hakumba. It's got 500-600 people that live there. Almost 100 children live there. They're about to have 5 sexually violent predators placed in their community.
5?
5.
Oh, that's a little more than one.
That's quite a few more than one, yes. You can imagine. I talked to those individuals out there. I went out there and spoke to them about this. I spoke to them about the sheriff's race. You know, it's important to them as well, but they are fit to be tied about this. They plan on getting themselves a couple of buses, as many people in that community as they can. They're going to go to court on September 30th, and they're going to let the judge know that it's wrong. I said the same thing. I sent a letter to the court. I wrote a letter to the court. I pointed out all these issues on how this is wrong to do. There's alternatives that can be taken. We shouldn't be putting these individuals in our rural communities. We've seen it happen in Borrego Springs. Now we're seeing it happen in Hakumba, and the ratio is unacceptable. It's unacceptable to be doing this anywhere when you don't have proper monitoring of somebody. But it's not acceptable in a small community like that, whenever you can stand there and you can throw a rock and hit almost every person who lives there, and unfortunately you can also hit 5 sexually violent predators. We need to make, there's things that can be done, but we need to use common sense about this, and we need to have, the community needs to have a voice in this. You need to have elected officials that stand up and they have a voice in this too. Public safety is important to them. They need to speak out on these kind of things, and those are the kind of things that I'm going to do whenever I'm sheriff. Let's talk about how we're going to win this thing, okay? That's important too, right? Everyone needs to know, how can we win this thing? It's a huge county. 3.5 million people out there, 2 million voters. Not everybody has the same ideals and beliefs as everybody else on either a political or social spectrum, but everybody cares about public safety in this county. And they've seen the crime on the rise. They've seen it in their communities. It's been happening in the last decade, and I think it's spiked even more in the last several years. They see more homelessness in their communities, and they're not seeing solutions. What they do want is they want to have their community safe, and they want strong public safety. And that's the message that I'm getting out there. We've seen a leadership void at the Sheriff's Department. And I can only say that's the only explanation that we can have on why we have jail deaths, why we have drugs that are coming across the border and they're getting into our communities, because there's not enough interdiction. It's getting into the jails. So what do we need? We need to change that status quo. Public safety is important to everybody. They shouldn't be expecting the status quo. They shouldn't want the status quo, because if you're concerned about it, you need to change. And you need to set a new standard, you need to set a higher standard. And we're going to do that by getting the word out to elect the sheriff. And that's me. A sheriff that cares about it, cares about public safety, and cares about this community, cares about every community. And that's how we win this. We're going to get the word out there, we're going to get on social media, email, whatever you can do. You know, and people that have questions, they can always feel free to ask me, but we got to get the word out that we need to change the status quo. We need to care about public safety, we need to care about communities, and we need to vote for John Hemmerling for sheriff. And I encourage you to all vote, and I'm asking you all, please vote for me. Vote for John Hemmerling for sheriff. Thank you all for coming out, and those of you that stuck around, I really appreciate it. I also have an event here in Ramona on October 14th, right in the middle of town. You'll see some information coming out about that. You can stop by and visit me also on October 14th at an event that we're doing out here at Red, White, and Bruise. Thank you.
All right, now thank you for coming up, buddy. You've got a busy day. You have the rest of the night off.
I appreciate that. I got something tomorrow as well, too. So
I got some questions for you, sir.
Yeah.
In light of the recent Supreme Court ruling on open carry, would you support open carry in San Diego in spite of California law?
I think the Supreme Court ruling was about good cause, and it's the same thing that I had said all along on good cause whenever I was speaking about this in the spring before the opinion came out, that the decision that in California, good cause, the way it was being implemented, you know, where you either had a yes or a no, it was arbitrary. You know, if a sheriff has the opinion of it's arbitrary, that's a problem, and the Supreme Court said that as well. So in the state of California, if you pass the statutory requirements to carry a concealed weapon, You're gonna get one in this county whenever I'm San Diego County Sheriff. It's gonna be efficient, it's gonna be done properly, it's gonna be turned around, and it's gonna be fixed. I know it's been a problem here, no matter what anybody tells you, it's been a problem, because everybody always asks these questions. And so, yes, in light of Supreme Court ruling, meet the statutory requirements, you're gonna get a permit.
What do you call statutory requirements?
California statute requires background investigation, it requires a training, certain number of hours of training, and then you get your permit. That's the basic statutory requirements.
And you're talking about concealed carry permit?
Correct.
All right, well, I tell you, we've got some great questions here. Great questions. Next one. Which law is supreme? The United States Constitution or California law?
They work in conjunction with each other. The U.S. Constitution and the California law work in conjunction. And California law is going to follow the U.S. Constitution.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
There's many places where California law does follow the Constitution. I can tell you, because I went to law school and spent a whole entire year not only just studying the U.S. Constitution, but I took an oath of office, which I've done this before, 8 times. Nobody else probably running for office, not just sheriff, any other office, has taken an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, 8 times like I have. I can guarantee I know what the Constitution is about.
Here's another one. If more health mandates are enacted, will you be enforcing them? Why or why not?
The sheriff's job is to look out for public safety. We got to prioritize whatever that may be. We've had this discussion before about these kind of things. If there's a serious threat to public safety, the sheriff's job is going to prioritize what things are the most important. And deputies need to be out there working on stopping violent crime, stopping drugs coming into our communities, keeping people alive in the jails. Those are things I'm going to concentrate on when I'm sheriff.
You didn't really
You
answer
didn't
that
answer the
question.
question.
I think I did. Public safety is the #1 priority.
So are you going to enforce
Specifically.
mandates?
Let me clarify the question. If more health mandates are enacted, will you be enforcing them? Why or why not?
Well, I think we're talking about the future. What is the health mandate and what's going to be enforced and who's enforcing it? I said whenever I was at the chief prosecutor in the city of San Diego that if they wanted to enforce health mandates, they could hire more code enforcement officers. That's what code enforcement officers do. You know, the ones that come out there and they check whether or not you have rats in your kitchen or you have the right electrical outlets and things like that. It's not a job for law enforcement in the sense of a police officer or a sheriff to be doing code enforcement things. We have individuals that could be doing that. We need to have our sheriff's deputies and police that's on the streets out there keeping our community safe from violent criminals.
So you're saying that health mandates are not in the realm of the sheriff's responsibilities? Would that be right?
I think we can say that I don't know what's going to be in the realm of the sheriff's responsibility when it comes to those mandates or something that possibly happens in the future. But I can tell you what I just said. When you have a health mandate, health mandates are not the sheriff's job. Health mandates are code enforcement and health officers' jobs.
Okay, that's an answer. Here's another one in that neighborhood. What would you do if an unconstitutional mandate is given by the governor or president? Unconstitutional in your perspective?
Well, I don't know if it's determined unconstitutional by the courts, then we won't be enforcing it.
The mandate of the vaccine protocol has not come to the courts.
Was that?
Why does it have to go
I
to
think
the
I answered the
courts?
question, didn't I?
No.
All right, someone asked clearly a question. Who?
If a bureaucrat dictates, decrees, rules, however you want to call it, that certain people must have a vaccine, or wear a mask, or any of these other ridiculous things, and people refuse to do it, will you, as sheriff, enforce those rules?
Very clear question. Thank you, Larry.
It's a yes or no.
If we have a law, the sheriff follows the law. I don't know about mandates and about directives from bureaucrats. Those are kind of a amorphous thing that's out there, right? I'm talking about enforcing laws that are on the books. That's what the sheriff's gonna do. The sheriff will enforce laws that are on the books. A legal law that's constitutional, on the books, that's what the sheriffs will do, right? But the sheriff will also prioritize, and I'm not saying that those are either on the books or they're not on the books. What I'm saying is that regardless, the sheriff's gonna prioritize what's the most important to public safety in each community, right? That's what's important to public safety. And I think I've talked about that. Violent criminals in our community, drugs in our community, we've all got homelessness issues in our community. Those are things that are important that the sheriff's gonna concentrate on. They've already well understaffed, right? And they should be concentrating things that are important. That's why you have a sheriff who understands what's the priorities of the community. Not the priority necessarily, as you mentioned, of the bureaucrat or somebody else. What's the priority of the community? That's why you vote for sheriff in the county, so you have that voice with law enforcement.
Okay. What is your view on interposition with citizens and the government? Interposition.
I don't think I know what that is.
Okay, I didn't think you did.
Well, most people don't, John, so, but this is a lady, Deborah, who teaches the Constitution. That's what she does.
All right.
Let me
Go ahead.
Okay, interposition, all you're doing is if you find out that the law, that something is unconstitutional, you place your sheriffs between the citizen and the government so that you protect us first. So interposition.
Yes, okay, I get your question. So
Okay.
if something is determined to be unconstitutional, absolutely, I will not be asking my deputies to be out there doing that kind of enforcement.
Okay, so because the mandate was never voted on by the Congress, so the Congress never voted, so it's not a law, which means that you don't have to have any of those sheriffs to enforce any of the things that has come down the pike,
On that same-
because it's not a law, never voted on.
On that same topic, are you familiar with 18 USC 242?
I'm not, are you?
No, I'm not familiar with that. I think I'm familiar with 901, which is the federal government's concealed carry and some other.
Deprivation of rights under color of law, 18 USC 242. If you're a sheriff, you should be familiar with that because it is your job. That's why you are elected by the people so that you can protect the people who elected you from
Absolutely.
overburdensome government. So if a law is passed that's unconstitutional by the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, it is your job as sheriff to protect the people from that unconstitutional law. And to say
Absolutely.
you're waiting for the courts to determine that it's unconstitutional.
Well, isn't that how, you speak about the Constitution, but isn't it unconstitutional if you don't follow the Constitution by allowing the courts to weigh in?
In the meantime, what you're saying is, in the meantime, you'll jail people for
I didn't say
violating
that.
unconstitutional law. You didn't say you won't.
Okay, all right, listen, I think the issue boils down to, you have laws passed by Congress. That is a law that the sheriff, all sheriffs, all across the country, need to enforce until that law is determined to be unconstitutional.
That's not true.
And
No, it's not. That's why the people.
there are
elect
mandates,
sheriffs.
excuse me, there are mandates issued by bureaucrats that require shots and all kinds of things that are not law, they are mandates that are, and the question is, for the sheriff candidate, would he enforce these mandates that are not the product of law? Would that be?
No, I'm sorry, no. Because here's the thing, Mr. Hemmerling, 9 sheriffs in the United States stood up to Congress when they told the sheriff's department that they wanted them to collect guns from US citizens. And they took the US government to court and they won. Because they were the sheriffs and they said this is unconstitutional, we will not enforce this, you are wrong. And that's what we need here in San Diego County. We need a sheriff that's gonna protect us, we the people who elect you. You are not the employee of the Board of Supervisors
Correct.
or the Governor of California. You are our employee. And it doesn't matter if the Supreme Court has yet ruled that the law is unconstitutional. It matters whether it's constitutional. And because you say you know the Constitution,
That's right.
you should be able to tell if a law that is passed by the California legislature or the Congress of the United States is actually constitutional. And if it's not, you should come out and say, that is not constitutional, that will not be enforced in the county of San Diego. That's what we the
Yeah, and
people
I agree,
want
there
to hear.
are laws that have been passed. that are not constitutional. You're correct.
Okay, so we did interrupt here. Cindy, thank you for your passion. All right. Next question. Why did you withdraw your Family First pledge just prior to the June primary? How do we know that you will not change one of your positions if you take office? This is a character issue. You want our vote. We want to know what we are voting for.
The sheriff, as I said here, you got 3.5 million people, you got a couple million voters, and of course we're not going to vote on or agree on every single issue on whatever it is, whether it be political or in the entire social spectrum. And so public safety, though, is absolutely one thing that's in common with everybody. You know, you want a sheriff who's going to be ensuring that public safety is number one, preservation of life is number one, that we're taking care of what's going on in the jails. We're looking out for victims first, and that's how we're treating it. And so that's what's important here. And I think that cuts across everybody. Everybody feels that the most important thing is public safety, and that's what was important to me. And I want to make sure that we stick to what the sheriff is going to do. The sheriff's going to be fair to everybody that wants public safety. I think everybody wants public safety. And you can bet whenever I'm sheriff, I'm going to treat everybody fair. I'm going to treat everybody with an unbiased hand, and you're going to get professional law enforcement across this entire county.
All right, John, with all due respect, you didn't answer the question. The question is, why did you withdraw your Family's First pledge just prior to the June primary?
Well, I think I did. I said, we're not going to agree on every single issue across the board, whether it be a political issue or it be a social issue. And I want to make sure that everybody out there knows that the sheriff's job is to maybe not agree or do agree on some of those issues. Out of the 2 million voters, probably some issues, there's going to be 2 million opinions. I want to stick to public safety. Public safety is what I'm sticking to, is what's important to this community, making sure that we have a good sheriff who puts victims first, who puts communities first. Who's going to get out there, we're going to keep our people in our jails protected, we're going to keep those that do or don't go into jail protected, we're going to make sure that we don't have drugs coming in across our borders and getting into our communities that's degrading our public safety, and that has been continuing on rising crime. So that's what it is. I'm concentrating on public safety and sticking to what the sheriff has the ability to impact. If you want somebody that's going to change the laws in Sacramento or change the laws at Congress, we have individuals here that you can vote for that need to do that. We've seen it everywhere. We do need changes in California. There's no doubt. The job of sheriff isn't to vote on those laws in Sacramento or in Washington, D.C. The job of the sheriff is to keep our communities safe. And that's what I'm sticking to. And everybody deserves to be safe in these communities.
All right, I have one more question for you. Excuse me, Sandy. He gave an answer. If you don't accept his answer, then that's the answer. So, Sandy, he answered the question. I presented to him twice. He gave us an answer. Draw your own conclusions from his answer. That's what I'm saying. All right. I'm very interested in concealed carry.
Yes.
The previous sheriff was opposed to concealed carry, did everything he could to block concealed carry until he lost in court. And then came the Supreme Court decision on the New York case. I want to know what your personal position is on control or on concealed carry in San Diego County if we elect you sheriff.
Well, you can also check out my opinion on it on my website, which I think, because I've been asked this question so much, so I put it out there so that it's clear, and you can read it and you can say, well, that's not what he said. But my position is that the Constitution allows everyone to keep and bear arms, and I've always said that. And in this county, you meet the statutory requirements, you're going to get a concealed carry permit. Period. It's going to be a lot better than it ever was. It's going to be efficient. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be fair. Because in my opinion, it hasn't been either transparent or fair in the last several years. You're going to get that whenever I'm sheriff. It's going to be efficient as well. Everybody knows, and you either had to wait months and months and months to say that was denied. You may wait months and months and months to then say come in and do an interview, then you're still waiting a year or two to get a permit. Is it inefficiency or is it purposeful inefficiency?
And no corruption.
Well, definitely no corruption. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be fair. You can absolutely guarantee you that you, Dan Summers, who may not give a single dollar to my campaign, is going to be treated the same on CCW as somebody that may have given me the maximum amount. It's going to be fair. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be efficient. Efficiency can be possible. The same reason why it can be efficient to running jails properly. It's about leadership, making it a priority. We're going to make it a priority because it gets back to simple processing and efficiency. It gets back to leadership, doing the right thing. And so the answer to your question, hopefully I answered it.
Yeah, that's as clear as it can get. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, sir.
I'd like to go back to the sex offenders being released into rural communities.
Can you speak up, please?
I'm asking about sex offenders being released into rural communities, going back to that topic. You talked about alternatives as the way that is being handled now. What would those alternatives be? So we live in a part of the community here where we've had a couple released into our area too, so it can have an impact. So what would those alternatives be?
You know, that's a great question. I really like it. You know, we have a problem. There's an elderly judge who's making most of these decisions from the bench, and he always seems to favor the sex offender over the residents where he's sending these people.
Yeah, so as I said, it's important. It's an important public safety issue, and public safety officials and every elected official should speak up on these things because it impacts communities. And there has been some proposed alternatives. Well, one thing I've always said is that those that you're electing to go to Sacramento, they should propose some changes to the laws on that, for one, where it could give the community to get a voice in it, right? The community could get some sort of weighted voice, the district attorney could get some weighted voice, maybe the sheriff gets a weighted voice on how this impacts those communities. The community themselves can get a weighted voice instead of just the judge and a person in Sacramento making these determinations. There's been one alternative that's been mentioned is that they placed in a place on the prison grounds itself, whether it be George Bailey out in South Bay or somewhere else. That's an alternative, and that's been proposed by some of them. I think one of that was proposed as an alternative to one of the judges at one point along the way too. So there are some alternatives, and there's also some changes in the law that could be made on that. But it definitely doesn't seem to be fair that they're being placed in some of our rural communities, and not just that, but they're also remote. And you can have a GPS monitor on your ankle all you want, but you know, you go outside where the cell phone tower is out in Hakumba, you don't have cell phone service, and you leave it about 100 feet. You're not going to be tracking anybody on their ankle monitor when you have zero ability to track a GPS. So there's all kinds of other problems that you have with that as well. But there are some alternatives that need to be explored, absolutely.
So maybe a more controlled environment for the release of those?
Yeah, I mean, it's a conditional release already. If you look and see what it is, these are not where there is no rules at all. It's already conditional because of these individuals are still have tendencies to be violent. So they're conditional already. So they need to have more conditions in an alternative location, probably. Thank you all.
Okay, one last question, guys.
Would you allow protesters, people to protest in front of the homes of these pedophiles? Or would you tell them to get away?
Okay, the question is, would the sheriff, if he becomes sheriff, allow protesters in front of the residences where the sexual predators are being housed?
Well, everybody has a right to their First Amendment right to protest, whether, no matter what their topic is that they're gonna protest. So individuals can definitely protest what it comes down to. There are some cities, I'm not saying every city, but there are some cities in this county that doesn't allow targeted residential picketing, meaning protesting. Not every city has that. I think I saw some recently at passed them since things have happened in 2020 and 2021. And some of that would be enforced by local police, but there are some areas out here. But the answer to your question is peaceful First Amendment protest is a right that every American has.
All right,
So,
Thanks, Dan.
okay.
follow up?
Are we,
So-
okay, Larry, the gentleman's gonna, what?
So does that mean in these specific cities that you referred to that have these laws that say you can't protest in front of an individual residence, since you're so aware of the Constitution allowing, would you go and arrest these people who are protesting in front of a specific residency in one of the cities that has the unconstitutional law that says you can't protest in front of a house?
Well, as I said, this gets back to any other kind of law. What's the priority that day, right? I mean, is there a robbery going on? Is there something else going on? If there's nothing going on, where you have to prioritize. You'd expect your law enforcement and your top sheriff to understand what's important to the community. And so that if the law is on the books and it's against the law, we want the sheriffs to enforce the law, is what you're saying.
If
And I
the
will
law is on
enforce the law,
books
yes.
And it's an unconstitutional law, which you've already stated clearly that you studied the Constitution for a year.
I think we're talking about targeted residential picketing, and you asked if it was a
Right.
law, how I would enforce it. I said, the sheriff will enforce the laws that we have.
Even though they're unconstitutional, that's what we're trying to get at. You will enforce unconstitutional laws. That's what you're saying.
Well, the law
No, I did not
that
say
you're
that.
bringing up has not been determined whether it's constitutional
The
or
man
unconstitutional.
said he studied the Constitution for a year.
I'm not gonna be enforcing any unconstitutional laws.
Okay.
So your
Okay.
question, you're trying to
But you
trick me
can't
into that, I'm not
adjudicate
enforcing
either.
it, and I never said that either.
Yeah.
But you
So
didn't say
anyway,
you would.
here's
That's
the-
what we're getting at.
Here's the bottom line. John Hemmerling came up here to Ramona to speak to us. You asked a lot of great questions, some tough questions, to your credit. Thank you. And now he's going back, having answered your questions to the best of his ability. It is now up to you to determine whether or not you're going to vote for John Hemmerling for sheriff. Mr. Hemmerling,
Thank you, Dan.
thank you for your time, sir.